Have you ever walked into a place, excited about something you love, only to be judged purely by how you look? What if that moment of quiet dismissal turned into a powerful lesson about respect, empathy, and second chances? When Hollywood superstar Keanu Reeves, disguised in simplicity, entered Aurora Motors in search of a motorcycle, he wasn't expecting a battle for fairness. Yet, a simple desire for a test ride quickly spiraled into a deeper stand against prejudice and snap judgments. How did a quiet afternoon turn into a moment of change for an entire dealership? And how did Keanu transform a frustrating encounter into a lasting message about kindness and integrity? Let's dive into this inspiring story of humility, courage, and the spirit of the open road. Before we continue this story, let us know where you are watching from. If you like stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. Keanu Reeves arrived in a modest, out-of-the-way city, prepared to begin filming his next movie. Although his talent and fame were well-known worldwide, he chose to dress in simple jeans, a faded t-shirt, and a worn baseball cap pulled low to shield his face. The intention was straightforward: to avoid public attention and enjoy a small dose of normalcy. After a grueling day on set, Keanu yearned for a personal escape, a motorcycle ride to clear his head and reconnect with the thrill he had always cherished. As he strolled down the quiet main street, he noticed a sleek, modern building with a dazzling golden sign that read Aurora Motors. Behind grand glass walls and under spotlights, rows of immaculate motorcycles stood like gleaming trophies. The shop had an air of exclusivity, and Keanu felt his pulse quicken at the sight of so many beautiful machines. He missed Los Angeles, where his own bike remained, and that familiar ache of wanting to feel the wind and hear the engines rumble grew more pronounced by the second. Slipping through the automatic doors, Keanu heard a gentle chime announce his entrance. The interior was just as impressive as the exterior. Pristine marble floors and carefully arranged spotlights gave each motorcycle its own stage. The air carried a faint scent of new leather and machine oil, the kind of aroma that promised an adrenaline rush. For a moment, he moved between the bikes, admiring the craftsmanship without attracting any particular notice from the staff. In this moment, he was merely a quiet observer. Suddenly, a crisp, clipped voice interrupted his reverie. Turning, he saw a tall salesman with a slick haircut and a suit tailored so well it could have been straight from the runway. The name badge read Andrew. He approached with perfect posture, but his polite smile somehow felt forced. "Good afternoon," Andrew greeted, looking Keanu up and down with barely veiled skepticism. "May I help you?" Keanu returned the greeting with genuine warmth. "I'm interested in finding a motorcycle, something classic, powerful, and freeing," he replied, keeping his voice calm and friendly. He wanted to see if there was a model that could match the feeling he yearned for: the open road, the sense of freedom that came from two wheels and a roar of an engine. Andrew's left eyebrow inched upward, betraying his immediate judgment. A faint smile curved his lips, but it was the sort of grin one offered when being barely polite. "Certainly. We specialize in premium motorcycles here. Our customers typically look for exclusivity and top-of-the-line features." His tone grew more pointed, as if implying Keanu might not fit that mold. "We don't offer rentals," he added, recalling Keanu's earlier inquiry about possibly renting. "All our inventory is for serious buyers." Used to such encounters, people assessing him at face value, Keanu remained unruffled. He'd faced many assumptions in his life and learned long ago not to let such superficial opinions get under his skin. "I understand," he said, casually adjusting his cap. "I'm prepared to buy if I find something that really speaks to me." Andrew gestured toward a bright red Ducati Panigale V4 perched on a raised platform. Its aggressive lines and advanced tech practically screamed speed. "This is a Panigale V4, he said, voice laced with pride. "It's cutting edge, built for discerning riders who appreciate performance at the highest level." Then, in a tone that carried more than a hint of condescension, he asked, "Are you familiar with this kind of engineering?" Keanu gave a modest nod. I've ridden a variety of bikes. Sport models have their appeal, but I'm hoping for something more classic. Maybe a powerful cruiser that can offer a more laid-back vibe. At that, Andrew's smile thinned. He guided Keanu to a Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114, its chrome details gleaming under the overhead lights. Here you are, classic enough, strong enough. Perhaps this is more your speed, he said. The insinuation was clear. Andrew believed Keanu might not belong among the highest price models. Running his hand along the Harley's handlebars, Keanu felt a familiar surge of excitement. It captured the essence of a timeless ride. It wasn't just a machine, it was a companion for the open road. Still, the tension between him and Andrew was obvious. The salesman was not convinced Keanu was worth his time. The entire moment foreshadowed an uphill battle just to be granted a test ride. Andrew stepped back, crossing his arms. Test drives aren't freely given here, sir, he stated. We have strict policies in place. These bikes are an investment. I just need a fair chance to test the bike before deciding. Andrew's condescending glance didn't waver, and he turned away with a clipped, "I'll see if the manager has a moment." He strode off, leaving Keanu by the Harley-Davidson, surrounded by luxury and skepticism, uncertain whether the next step would bring understanding, or yet another wall of prejudice. Keanu Reeves waited patiently beside the Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114, taking time to trace the contours of its metal frame. He recalled many rides from his past, sun-drenched highways, evening cruises through neon-lit boulevards, and quiet back roads at sunrise. Those memories grounded him now, reminding him why he had come in the first place. He needed that rush of wind and engine noise to wash away the stress of filming and bring him back to his simpler joy. Minutes passed before Andrew returned, his expression remaining poised in haughty control. "I spoke with our manager, James Carter," he announced, keeping his voice low yet firm. "We can't authorize a test drive at this time. The store has guidelines, and you don't meet certain criteria." Keanu's eyebrows lifted, though he worked to keep any sharpness from his tone. "Which criteria are those?" Andrew sighed as if forced to handle a petulant child. "Look, sir," he began, avoiding using Keanu's name since he genuinely hadn't recognized him. "We cater to a specific clientele. Anyone who wants to test these motorcycles must demonstrate a capacity to purchase and the skill to handle them. These machines require a certain expertise." The implication felt like a slap. Andrew assumed Keanu lacked the finances, the riding skill, or both. Although the comment stung, Keanu had encountered worse in his life. He was no stranger to judgments based on appearance. But it still grated that he had to prove himself in such a basic transaction. "I've been riding motorcycles for years," Keanu replied calmly. "And if the worry is about cost, that's something we can certainly talk about. I've owned multiple high-performance bikes in the past." Andrew's eyes flickered, but he refused to soften his stance. Instead, he settled on a patronizing smirk. "Owning a bike and being able to handle the new models we sell here could be entirely different matters." For a moment, Keanu considered walking away. After all, there were other dealerships that would welcome his business. But something about Andrew's arrogant air made him pause. There was a principle at stake beyond the simple purchase of a machine. Why was the salesman so dead set on denying a potential customer? Could it be pure bias, or was there a deeper need to assert his own authority? He looked around the showroom, noting the other staff members quietly going about their day. Some threw curious glances his way, perhaps wondering if Andrew was overstepping. One or two seemed uncomfortable, but they didn't interfere. Meanwhile, a couple of prospective customers pretending to admire bikes were clearly eavesdropping. "May I speak to James Carter directly?" Keanu asked finally, his voice measured but firm. "I'd like to hear from him precisely why I'm not allowed a test ride." Andrew's confident exterior faltered for a split second, but he covered it by clearing his throat. "He's tied up at the moment," he replied. "We don't normally disturb him for such matters." The arrogance was now glaringly obvious. Andrew had no intention of letting Keanu proceed in a standard manner. He wanted to maintain power. Nonetheless, Keanu decided he wouldn't leave until he got an answer. "I'll wait," Keanu said politely, crossing his arms. Seeing his determination, Andrew hesitated, eventually offering a dismissive nod. "Suit yourself," he said, disappearing into a side office. Keanu remained by the motorcycle, thinking back to the times he'd walked into far less opulent dealerships without an issue. Even among high-end showrooms, he was usually met with professional courtesy. This was new territory, a direct challenge born from Andrew's personal biases. Minutes trickled into a quarter hour. An older man who had been eyeing a sleek Triumph approached Keanu hesitantly. "I couldn't help but notice what's going on," the man said in a hushed tone. "I'm no celebrity, but I felt that same condescending air before. Sorry you have to deal with that." Keanu offered a small smile. "Thanks for the concern. I'm sure you understand how frustrating it is when people judge you on appearances." The man nodded sympathetically. "I do. This isn't the first time I've seen Andrew act like that. But the manager, James Carter, is usually more fair. He might straighten things out once he's aware." Keanu appreciated the kindness. "Let's hope so." Eventually, Andrew re-emerged, still wearing his forced politeness. "Mr. Carter is attending an important call," he said, though his stare suggested he was waiting for Keanu to give up. "He won't be free for a while." Keanu steadied himself. He had nowhere more pressing to be, and he was stubborn enough to see this through. "I'll stay right here," he said quietly. "I'm sure he'll have to finish his call at some point." Andrew's jaw tightened, and he huffed in annoyance. He spun on his heel, leaving Keanu once more standing by the fat boy, determined yet uncertain of what James Carter's reaction would be. The entire dealership felt pregnant with tension, as if any moment a confrontation could break out in full. Amid the hush, Keanu wondered how many other people had been turned away like this, purely because they didn't look the way someone expected. He made a quiet promise to himself that if he ended up speaking with the manager, he would do more than just secure a test ride. He would address the deeper issue at hand, the prejudice that had become evident from the moment he walked in. Time crawled, and the showroom's hum of polite conversation resumed, but a charged undercurrent remained. A small group of onlookers had caught on to the tension and kept tabs on Keanu's quiet vigil near the Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114. Some whispered among themselves, pointing or nodding in his direction, clearly curious about the standoff. Keanu stayed composed, though inside he felt a simmering frustration. If this had been a situation in which he was simply recognized and welcomed, he might have already purchased the Harley and ridden off to enjoy the countryside. Instead, he was left waiting, as if on trial, for wanting something as routine as a test ride. After what felt like another eternity, Andrew reappeared, his mouth set in a hard line. "Mr. Carter will see you now," he stated tersely, turning on his heel. Without waiting for Keanu's acknowledgement, he strode across the polished marble floor toward a sleek glass-walled office near the back. Keanu followed, taking in the dealership's luxurious decor. It was the epitome of style, yet marred by an odd hollowness in how it treated its customers. Stepping inside the office, Keanu found James Carter behind a modern desk. The manager looked to be in his early 50s, with salt and pepper hair and a tailored shirt that spoke to a sense of refined professionalism. Initially, James's expression was polite yet guarded, likely prepared to stand by Andrew. But the moment he took a more deliberate look at Keanu, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. "Mr. Reeves," James said, immediately switching his tone to one of surprise and respect. Rising from his desk, he extended a hand. "I'm James Carter, the manager here at Aurora Motors. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I understand you are interested in one of our motorcycles." Andrew hovered by the doorway, arms folded defensively. He hadn't heard James address Keanu by name before. His puzzled expression was plain. "Mr. Reeves?" The name was sinking in, but he remained skeptical or simply flummoxed. Keanu shook James's hand, noting the manager's subtle unease. "Yes, sir. I was looking at the Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114. I'd like a test ride before making a decision. However, Andrew told me the policy doesn't allow that without certain qualifications." James leveled a meaningful gaze at Andrew before returning his attention to Keanu. I see. Well, in general, we do have strict guidelines for test rides, but they're meant to ensure safety and respect for the equipment. If you're prepared to buy, we normally do allow test drives, especially if the individual has demonstrable experience. Andrew cleared his throat, bristling. I was following protocol, Mr. Carter. I had no idea. James held up a hand, silencing him. Let's be clear. Every customer deserves courtesy, regardless of whether they're a high-profile figure or not. His polite tone hardened slightly, revealing his disapproval of how Andrew had handled things. Relieved at this shift, Keanu exhaled some of the tension he'd been carrying. I don't expect special treatment. I just wanted fairness. That's all. I'm more than willing to follow whatever tests or safety checks you need to confirm my ability to ride. James nodded, an earnest apology in his eyes. Of course, Mr. Reeves. This entire misunderstanding is unfortunate. If I had known you were, well, that's not even the point. The point is that you should have been treated with respect from the start. He turned to Andrew again, who was losing his earlier swagger by the second. Andrew, please coordinate a proper test ride for Mr. Reeves. Immediately, Andrew sputtered, clearly a loss. Yes, sir, he managed, the flush of embarrassment creeping into his cheeks. He left the office with brisk steps to make the arrangements, aware that the eyes of both the manager and Keanu were fixed on him. With Andrew gone, James motioned for Keanu to sit. I'd like to personally apologize. We can't undo how you were treated, but I want to ensure your future experiences here are positive. We pride ourselves on high standards, but that should extend to customer service, not just the motorcycles we sell. Keanu appreciated the sincerity, though he remained calm. I understand policies can be complicated, but it felt like more than protocol. Andrew made a snap judgment about me. I'm less concerned about myself, and more concerned that this might happen to others who don't have the visibility I do. James's brow furrowed with genuine concern. You raise a valid point. We do rely on a certain image, but we never want that to turn into exclusion or disrespect. I'll be reviewing our training and expectations with all staff. That includes Andrew. We have a responsibility to approach every potential customer with an open mind. Nodding, Keanu said, That's good to hear. Thank you. Now, if we can proceed with the test ride, I'd still love to see how that Harley handles. By all means, James answered, standing and gesturing for Keanu to follow him out. Let's go make it happen. They stepped back into the main showroom. The atmosphere had shifted. Some customers continued browsing, but more than a few had been watching the drama unfold. Andrew stood by the dealership's side exit, eyes lowered and face rigid, overseeing an employee who rolled the Harley outside for Keanu. Keanu met Andrew's gaze. There was a swirl of uncertainty and bruised pride in the salesman's eyes. Yet, all Andrew mustered was a terse, "Your bike's ready, sir." "Thank you," Keanu replied quietly, knowing that sometimes humility could say more than any verbal retort. He followed the employee out to the parking area, the sun shining on the gleaming chrome of the fat boy. The tension inside the building gave way to a new kind of thrill. Soon, he'd be able to feel the road beneath him. Keanu placed a hand on the seat, checking its height and firmness. He ran a quick mental checklist: mirrors, controls, overall condition. Everything looked perfect. He took the helmet offered by another staffer and adjusted it, preparing to climb aboard. As Andrew and James watched from the sidelines, the rumble of the Harley's engine brought a sudden smile to Keanu's face. This was what he had wanted all along. The joy and liberation of the open road. The battle with Andrew felt as though it might finally be resolving. Revving the engine lightly, Keanu nodded to James. "I'll see you in a bit." With that, he eased the bike into gear, pulled out of Aurora Motors, and disappeared down the street, the throaty roar of the engine echoing behind him. For the first time that day, he felt truly free. The rumble of the Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114 reverberated through Keanu's body as he left the dealership behind. Sunlight gleamed against the chrome, while the town's subdued atmosphere passed in a gentle blur. Right away, he felt an exhilarating release, as though every ounce of tension left over from the encounter at Aurora Motors evaporated into the warm afternoon air. For Keanu, motorcycles were more than a hobby. They offered a visceral connection to the world, an invitation to be present in each moment. Feeling the bike respond to his slightest touch, sensing the wind brushing across his face. Hearing the engine's distinct roar, all of it blended into an unmatched experience. He soon found a two-lane road leading away from the city center and onto open stretches of farmland. Fields of green and gold sprawled out on either side, trees casting long shadows as the day progressed. The calm, wide-open scenery was a perfect antidote to the stuffy pretension he had left behind at the dealership. As he picked up speed, a smile spread under his helmet, a genuine reaction to the simple pleasure of being on the road. Eventually, the route led him to a modest roadside cafe set atop a slight hill. Its large windows displayed a handful of patrons sipping drinks. Keanu pulled into the small gravel lot, parked the Harley, and cut the engine. With a sudden quiet, he could almost hear his own heartbeat. He took off his helmet, shook out his hair, and inhaled deeply, savoring the moment. The clink of dishes and the low hum of conversation enveloped him as he stepped inside. A group of teenagers immediately recognized his face and exchanged stunned glances. One of them mustered the courage to approach, phone in hand. Excuse me, sir. You're Keanu Reeves, right? Keanu offered a friendly grin. Yes, that's me. How's it going? Nervous excitement danced in their eyes. We're huge fans. Your movies mean so much to us. The Matrix, John Wick, they're legendary. What brings you out here, in the middle of nowhere? Keanu explained that he was in town filming and had come across Aurora Motors while looking for a bike. Sometimes you just need a ride, he joked, to clear your head. They nodded enthusiastically. Totally. Do you mind if we get a photo? Asked one of the teenagers, holding up the phone. Not at all, Keanu answered, happy to oblige. He spent a few minutes chatting and posing for pictures. Their sincere admiration warmed him, a refreshing contrast to the suspicion and snobbery he'd faced earlier at the dealership. After they returned to their table, Keanu placed a quick order at the counter, a simple black coffee. Sipping the aromatic brew, he sat at a small table near the cafe window and let his thoughts wander. He realized that, ironically, Andrew's rude behavior might spark a larger change for Aurora Motors. If his own experience could lead to a positive transformation in how they treated people, perhaps the ordeal was worth it. Finishing his coffee, Keanu walked back to the Fat Boy, where a few other patrons were now admiring the motorcycle. He said a polite goodbye, strapped on his helmet, and started the engine. The bike roared to life, and he eased back onto the road, heading in the direction of Aurora Motors. Part of him wanted to finalize everything. He truly loved the feel of that Harley, and another part felt it essential to speak again with James Carter. He believed the manager was genuine and wanted to make things right. On the way, Keanu mentally composed what he planned to say, addressing the store's bias and possibly helping them pivot to a more open-minded approach felt like an unexpected responsibility, but it was one he refused to shy from. In his mind, it wasn't only about a single salesman's attitude. It was about an entire culture that might be pushing potential motorcycle enthusiasts away simply because they didn't look the part. By the time he rode back into the dealership parking lot, the sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows on the glossy exterior of Aurora Motors. He parked the Harley neatly out front and let the engine idle a moment before switching it off. Several employees stood inside, and a few looked out curiously. Stepping through the automatic doors, Keanu removed his helmet again. The hush that fell over the space reminded him of how the day's events had begun. This time, however, there was a newfound tension. People knew now who he was. James Carter, noticing Keanu's return, immediately approached. Andrew lingered further back, arms crossed, eyes averted. "Welcome back, Mr. Reeves," James said, offering a more genuine smile than before. "How was the ride? I hope the Harley was everything you expected." Keanu returned the smile. "It was perfect. Thank you for making it happen." James nodded, seemingly relieved. "Would you like to finalize the purchase?" We'd be honored to have a customer like you ride away on one of our bikes. Keanu set his helmet down on a nearby desk. That's one possibility, he responded. But before we talk dollars and paperwork, there's something more important we need to discuss. The wide, polished showroom suddenly felt even quieter. James Carter's posture tensed a bit, as if he realized that business as usual was not about to resume. Andrew watched from behind a display, his expression guarded. Other employees and a handful of customers hovered on the periphery, intrigued by the conversation about to unfold. Keanu Reeves set his helmet aside with care and spoke in a clear, direct tone. I appreciate the opportunity to ride the bike and your willingness to step in, Mr. Carter, he began, addressing James. But I think there's a bigger issue at play here than simply whether or not I can buy a motorcycle. James offered a nod that was half acknowledgement, half question. I understand. Please go on. Keanu made sure to keep his voice steady, though passion underlay every word. When I walked in, I was treated as if I wasn't worthy of stepping foot in this store. Andrew made judgments about me, my appearance, my intentions, without even bothering to get to know who I was or what I was capable of. Now, I'm not interested in an apology just for me. I'm more concerned about all the people who come here who might never get the chance to prove themselves because they're dismissed at first glance. At the mention of Andrew's name, the salesman shifted uncomfortably. James's gaze flickered in Andrew's direction before returning to Keanu. We have high standards, Mr. Reeves, and sometimes I think we mistake exclusivity for condescension. But I hear what you're saying, and I'm willing to do better. Keanu nodded. High standards are fine. Nobody's arguing against the quality of your bikes or your business. You sell freedom and adventure here. That's the spirit of riding. One of the other employees stepped forward, a younger woman with a polite expression. I've seen this kind of thing a few times, she admitted quietly. Andrew isn't the only one who's quick to judge. Sometimes we assume someone won't fit in here just because they don't look the part. James glanced at her and then back at Keanu. His shoulders sagged slightly, the weight of responsibility evident on his face. I've been running Aurora Motors for years, and I've always wanted it to be a place where motorcycle enthusiasts could find the best. But maybe we got carried away with the glamour of it all, forgetting that riders come from every walk of life. Keanu spoke gently but firmly. Exactly. Motorcycles bring people together. Rich, poor, famous, unknown, young, old. If Aurora Motors can become known as a place that respects every enthusiast, imagine how that could change the community around you. James exhaled, extending his hand. Mr. Reeves, I'm willing to make some changes. I'll arrange training for our staff on how to treat every potential customer with respect, and we'll encourage open-mindedness from the moment someone walks in the door. This won't be just a memo or a quick reminder. It'll be part of our core values going forward. A small but genuine smile curved across Keanu's face. He shook James's hand. That's what I was hoping to hear. If I do decide to buy this Harley, I want to ride away knowing this place is on a new path. Just then, Andrew cleared his throat. All eyes turned to him. His voice was lower than usual, weighted with a mix of regret and residual pride. Mr. Reeves, he began, I apologize. I judged you based on your clothes and how you approached the store. That was wrong. I didn't realize who you were, but that doesn't excuse my behavior. It won't happen again. Keanu studied Andrew's face for sincerity. He gave a small nod. Thank you. Going forward, treat everyone with a clean slate. All right. Andrew managed a hesitant nod, relief laced in his features. I will. The tension that had dominated Aurora Motors all day began to ease, replaced by a curious optimism. A few customers who had been peering over at the conversation gave small nods or smiles, appreciative of the stand Keanu had taken. Employees glanced among themselves, seemingly agreeing that a shift in company culture was needed. James motioned toward a desk to the side of the showroom. Shall we talk about finalizing your purchase, Mr. Reeves? We'd be honored for you to leave here as the official owner of that Harley. Keanu accompanied James to the desk, but before sitting down, he paused, lifting his helmet with a grin. Yes, let's do it. I want to ride out of here knowing that Aurora Motors will treat every rider like I'd want to be treated, like we all deserve to be treated. The subsequent paperwork and payment were straightforward. When all was signed and sealed, James handed Keanu the keys with a genuine smile. Onlookers offered a round of subdued applause, seemingly aware they were witnessing more than a star buying a motorcycle. They were witnessing a tangible shift in perspective for everyone there. Keanu thanked James and stood, keys in hand. He turned briefly to Andrew. Thank you as well. This was a tough day, but could lead to something better for all of us. Andrew nodded earnestly, now understanding that today's lessons reached far beyond a single transaction. Helmet tucked under his arm, Keanu walked to the entrance of Aurora Motors. He looked back at the newly united staff, James standing confidently, Andrew appearing chastened yet hopeful, and several employees wearing warm, welcoming smiles. With one final nod, he pushed through the door, eager to take the open road on his new Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114, feeling that he had, in some small way, left Aurora Motors better than he found it. By the end of that day, Aurora Motors was no longer just a high-end dealership showcasing shiny motorcycles and polished floors. It was a place on the cusp of transformation, an institution committed to embracing every customer's passion, regardless of appearances or preconceived notions. Keanu Reeves' encounter with Andrew demonstrated that all it takes is one experience to highlight a systemic issue. His insistence on fairness and respect called attention to a deeper need within the business to reevaluate how it interacted with people from all walks of life. For Keanu, the event was never about wielding fame or demanding special treatment. Instead, it was about championing the core spirit of motorcycling: unity, freedom, and the open road. Every rider knows the magnetic pull of the horizon, the hum of wheels against asphalt, and the raw sense of adventure that transcends social barriers. By the time he rode away on his Harley-Davidson Fat Boy 114, the importance of that universal bond rang clearer than ever. In the days that followed, James Carter and his staff took meaningful steps to uphold the promise made that afternoon. They scheduled training sessions, open conversations among employees, and refined policies so that every visitor, regardless of wealth, fame, or appearance, would feel respected the moment they stepped through the door. Andrew, humbled by his missteps, embraced this new direction. He recognized that offering someone a fair chance could lead to deeper understanding, not only improving business, but enriching his own perspective. Ultimately, this story underscores how simple acts of empathy can initiate significant change. Through one pivotal meeting, an individual's quiet dignity and principled stand reshaped a dealership's identity. Keanu's ride may have started as a personal quest for freedom, but it ended as a powerful reminder that compassion and open-mindedness can pave the way for true transformation.